I used to believe that if I just kept the peace, everything would hold together. For over 30 years, I swallowed my words, smiled through clenched teeth, and let my sister-in-law bulldoze her way through our family gatherings. I knew her moods before she opened her mouth. I could tell when the pills started mixing with the wine, and I learned to brace myself for the storm every time she entered a room. She wasn't always awful. That's what made it harder. She had moments of charm, big laughs, generous gestures, even moments of warmth that made you think, maybe she's trying. But they never lasted. And when the darkness came, it swallowed everything. She'd throw tantrums over imagined slights, turn sweet family dinners into war zones, cry and scream, then act like nothing happened the next morning. Everyone tiptoed around her, especially my brother. He made excuses. She's just overwhelmed. She didn't mean it. You know how she gets. And somehow, I became the one who had to absorb her damage to keep the family from falling apart. Over the years, I let it go. I kept quiet. For the sake of my niece and nephew, who I loved like they were my own, I played the role of calm, steady aunt, the one who always showed up, the one who never reacted. But resentment is a quiet thing. It doesn't scream. It stacks, brick by brick. And by the time we planned that 10-day trip to Italy together, the wall inside me was already built high, solid, and ready to break. I didn't know it then, but that trip would be the last time I ever played peacekeeper, and I would pay the price not for what I did, but for finally saying no. When my brother invited me on the trip, I hesitated. A 10-day family vacation across Italy, Rome, Florence, and Venice. It sounded like a dream on paper. Sun-drenched vineyards, cobbled alleys, ancient ruins. And I needed a break from work, from the noise of my own life. But then came the catch. "She be coming too," he said, casually, like I wouldn't notice. She, my sister-in-law. I paused. There was a long beat of silence between us. I could feel him waiting for my protest. But I didn't give him one. Instead, I forced a laugh and said, "Of course. It wouldn't be a family trip without her, right?" He didn't laugh back. Part of me hoped this time would be different. She was older now, maybe mellowed out. My niece and nephew were grown, young adults, and surely they had learned to manage their mom's moods better by now. Maybe, just maybe, we could have a real vacation. A clean slate. So I said yes. We landed in Rome, and for a while, it actually felt like a vacation. The food, the architecture, the gelato on every corner, it's all fun things. She was unusually quiet at first. Cordial, even. She asked about my job. She complimented my shoes. My guard loosened. My niece and nephew were warm, funny, and full of stories. We took selfies in front of the Colosseum and laughed about trying to pronounce things from the menu. My brother and I even had a long, easy conversation over espresso. I started to think, maybe I was wrong. But that was the trap. With her, the storm always comes after the calm. And I should have known better than to let myself hope. Day for in Florence, the cracks started to show. It was subtle at first. A passive-aggressive sigh when we lingered too long at a museum. A jab at me during dinner when I mispronounced gnocchi. She laughed like it was harmless. But my nephew shot me a glance across the table. That look we all shared when she started to fray. I brushed it off. But the next morning, things escalated. She threw a fit at the hotel receptionist because her room wasn't bright enough. My brother tried to calm her down, but she snapped at him, loudly accusing him of always taking sides. The poor receptionist didn't even know what hit her. Back in our shared rental car, the air was thick. She scrolled furiously on her phone. While we drove through Tuscany's rolling hills, no one said a word. The silence was louder than any shouting could have been. Then came the wine tasting. We were supposed to visit a quiet vineyard for a private tour, a peaceful afternoon. But 3 glasses in, she started talking, loudly, slurring. She made inappropriate comments to the host, mocked the other guests, and turned to me with a bitter smile and said, "You always were the judgmental one, huh?" It hit like a slap. I didn't respond. I just looked at my brother, but he looked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of what she said, but because I knew, no matter how far we traveled, this trip was never going to be about Italy. It was going to be about survival, again. And for the first time in decades, I felt something stronger than exhaustion. I felt done. Rome was our final stop. By then, I was counting down the hours. Not the sights left to see, but the minutes until I could breathe again. I tried to stay present, threw coins in the Trevi fountain, toured the Vatican, but every moment felt like borrowed time. Then came our last evening. We were sitting at a cafe in Piazza Navona, the square glowing with golden light. Street musicians played something soft and familiar. My niece and nephew were teasing each other over pasta. I thought maybe we could end this on a quiet note. She ordered her third glass of wine, then a fourth. And then, without warning, it started. "You know," she said, loud enough for nearby tables to turn. "It's funny how some people can pretend they're so perfect, so above everyone." I knew it was coming. I kept my eyes on my fork. She turned to me. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" My brother murmured, "Not now," but she ignored him. "You've been judging me since the day I joined this family. You've always resented me. You poison everything." My heart pounded. I tried to breathe through it, but she kept going, dredging up lies, twisting moments from years ago, painting herself as the victim in stories I wasn't even part of. And then she said it. "You made my life hell. I should have never had to come on this trip with you." The table went silent. My nephew looked like he might cry. I stood up. "I'm done," I said, voice shaking but steady. "You don't get to do this anymore." I walked away. Right there in the middle of Rome, I left. I checked into a hotel across the city that night, alone, free. For the first time in 30 years, I chose myself. The room was small, just a twin bed, a narrow window, and a chair in the corner. But to me, it felt like a cathedral. The silence was deafening at first, like my ears had to recalibrate after years of enduring her chaos. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, unsure what emotion to feel. Relief or grief? Guilt. I'd never walked away before. Not once, not in 30 years. Every birthday, every holiday, every blow-up, I had stayed. For my brother, for the kids, for the image of family I kept trying to preserve. And now I was here, alone in a foreign city, heart racing but breathing. I stared at my phone for what felt like hours. No messages, no missed calls, no apologies. I thought about calling my brother, thought about trying to explain myself. But then I remembered his face at the cafe, blank, silent, detached. He had let her humiliate me in public, just like he always did behind closed doors. And I realized something I had never admitted out loud. He had chosen her, always had. I ran a heart bath and let the water soak into my tired bones. In the quiet, memories rose like bubbles. The first time she called me a liar at Christmas. The way she marked my job in front of the kids. The time she showed up drunk to my mother's memorial. And I remembered my silence, too. How I swallowed every hurt to keep things normal. But normal had become a prison. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just slept, deeper than I had in years. Because walking away didn't feel like failure anymore. It felt like freedom. The next morning, I checked out just after sunrise. Rome was still quiet, the streets slick from an early rain. Vendors setting up shop along the square as if nothing explosive had happened the night before. The family's flight wasn't until late afternoon, but I showed up early to the airport anyway. Not because I wanted to see them, I didn't, but because I knew. Despite everything, I couldn't avoid them forever. We were on the same flight, same gate, same shared blood. When I reached the terminal, I spotted them instantly. They were sitting at the far end of the waiting area, my brother, my niece, my nephew, and her. She was laughing at something on her phone like the night before it never happened. My niece looked up, made eye contact with me, then quickly looked away. No one waved. No one stood. No one said a word. I sat at the opposite end of the gate. The hours crawled. When it was finally time to board, I walked past them in silence. Not one of them looked at me. Not even my nephew, who used to run into my arms every Thanksgiving. I felt like a ghost. Like I had died in Rome and was returning to the States as someone else entirely. On the plane, my seat was 2 rows behind them. I watched as they talked, shared snacks, passed earbuds. No tension, no fallout. Just them, intact, like I was never part of the picture at all. And that's when it hit me. They were fine, because I was the problem they had finally removed. The one time I defended myself, they cut me out like a tumor. And for the first time, I didn't wish to be let back in. Back home, the house felt unfamiliar. I had left it tidy, expecting to return with souvenirs and stories. Instead, I unpacked silence, not just in my home, but in my life. There were no voicemails from my brother checking in. No text from my niece asking if I'd landed safely. Not even a passive-aggressive message from her. Just nothing. I scrolled through my phone out of habit, half expecting a flood of family group chat messages. But the last message was from before the trip, a blurry photo of a Roman fountain. Captioned, "Can't wait." I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at that message for a long time. They had erased me. A week passed, then another. The silence hardened into distance, and the longer it stretched, the more I realized something painful, but honest, maybe. I'd always been disposable in their eyes. Maybe I had mistaken tolerance for love and familiarity for closeness. I went to therapy. I started journaling, pages and pages of things I had swallowed for years. All the times I'd been hurt and told myself it wasn't that bad. All the birthdays ruined. All the slights disguised as jokes. I even tried to reach out once, a soft, careful message to my niece. "I miss you. I hope you're okay. I'm here if you want to talk." She read it. She never replied. The echo was worse than the silence. And yet, somewhere in the grief, I started to feel lighter. Because for the first time, I wasn't performing. I wasn't pretending. I wasn't burying myself to fit into their version of family. They were gone, but so was the weight of holding them together. The first time I heard their version of the story, it came through a mutual friend. "She said you ruined the trip," the friend told me, cautiously. "That you were jealous, confrontational, and tried to create drama for no reason." I didn't even feel anger, just a numb sort of awe. "Jealous of her. She said you abandoned them at the airport." I nearly laughed. Of course she did. She would never mention the public meltdown in Piazza Navona, or the years of unprovoked cruelty. In her story, I wasn't the one who had taken abuse for 3 decades. I was the villain, who had finally snapped. And the others, they let it stand. My brother, my niece, my nephew. They accepted that version because it was easier. Easier than facing the truth that they had all let it happen. That silence is a form of siding with the abuser. That every time I kept the peace, I taught them I could survive without protection. And now, they expected me to keep surviving without it. I spent nights wondering if I should have said more. Should I have told the truth, piece by piece, to each of them? Should I have demanded to be heard? But eventually, I understood. They had already decided who I was in their story. I wasn't the loyal one who always showed up. I was the ungrateful one who walked away. There is nothing lonelier than realizing your reputation in someone else's mouth no longer belongs to you. But there is also a kind of freedom in letting go of the need to correct it. I was the villain in their story, but I was finally the hero in my own. There's this idea that healing means circling back. That forgiveness looks like reunions, reconciliations, holding hands across burned bridges. But healing, I learned, can be quiet. It can be choosing not to return a call. It can be sitting at your own table instead of begging for a seat at theirs. I stopped checking for messages. I unfollowed them online, not out of pettiness, but protection. Every smiling photo with her felt like a silent dare. Look how fine we are without you. And maybe they were. Good for them. I started filling my calendar with things that made me feel real again. Art classes, walks, long drives with no destination. I began writing about the years I'd lost. About the strength I didn't know I had. About the silence that had shaped me more than words ever did. People say time heals. That's a lie. What you do with time, that's what heals. One day, an invitation came in the mail. A family wedding. My nephew's. I held the envelope for hours before opening it. I knew what it was before I read the card. I wasn't mentioned. Not even a handwritten note. Just a generic invite sent to my address. Like I was a distant cousin. Not someone who once braided his hair for school picture day. I didn't go. I didn't send a gift. I grieved what could have been, and then I let it float away. Like a leaf in a stream, I no longer tried to swim against. Because healing isn't always a door swinging open. Sometimes, it's the moment you stop knocking. 1 year later, I returned to Rome. I didn't plan it for closure. I didn't even plan it for symbolism. I just woke up one day, booked the flight, and went. No fanfare. No itinerary, just me, a carry-on. and the memory of a life-shifting moment I hadn't fully processed until now. It was late spring. The air was warm, familiar. I walked the streets like a ghost retracing their own steps. The gelato stand near the Trevi fountain. The quiet alley where I had cried into a cappuccino. The morning after it all fell apart. The stone bench in Piazza Navona where I once stood to leave behind a lifetime of silence. And then I sat. Same cafe, same square. Different me. The fountain still danced. Tourists still laughed. Somewhere nearby, a violinist played the same haunting melody I heard that night. But now, it didn't trigger panic. It was background music to a life I had reclaimed. I pulled out my journal and wrote one line. I am not angry anymore. Not at her. Not at them. Not even at myself. Forgiveness, I realized, had nothing to do with letting them back in. It had everything to do with releasing the grip of their choices on my peace. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need a rewritten version of the past. I just needed to remember that I chose myself and survived. That night, I watched the sunset over the Tiber River alone. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone at all. I felt free.